The crisp autumn morning air, usually a welcome invigorator, felt strangely heavy as I settled into the plush burgundy chair at the Sunrise Community Credit Union. My fingers, almost subconsciously, began a restless drumming against the padded armrest, a quiet counterpoint to the growing unease in my stomach. The lobby, a picture of sterile professionalism, hummed with the scent of fresh lemon polish and the rich, roasted aroma of coffee, a deliberate attempt at comfort that only highlighted the stark contrast with the tension building within me. Muted conversations drifted from various desks, punctuated by the rhythmic, almost hypnotic click of keyboards, creating a soundscape that usually signified mundane financial transactions, but today felt charged with an unspoken dread. Through the tall, expansive windows overlooking the parking lot, gold and crimson leaves, liberated by the gentle breeze, performed a delicate, swirling dance across the asphalt, oblivious to the storm brewing indoors. "It'll just take a minute, Stephanie," Victor had reassured me earlier that morning, his voice annoyingly casual, almost breezy, as he slathered butter generously onto his toast. "A small refinance. We just need your signature as a co-borrower." He'd said it with such disarming normalcy, as if this were a routine, unremarkable chore. But now, as I watched the bank manager's hands, Howard Langley, a man whose reputation for meticulousness preceded him, tremble ever so slightly while he slid a stack of official-looking documents across the gleaming surface of his mahogany desk, a cold, undeniable certainty began to solidify within me. Something was profoundly, terribly wrong. "Miss Adler," Howard Langley began, his voice dropping to a cautious, almost conspiratorial near whisper, an attempt at discretion that failed to quell the sudden rush of adrenaline in my veins. His silver-rimmed glasses caught the harsh fluorescent light overhead, reflecting the stark reality of the situation as he tapped a blue pen against a bold signature line on one of the documents. "I need to point out some inconsistencies. This appears to be your signature on previous loan documents, but our verification process flagged it." The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory, echoing the frantic beat of my heart. Beside me, Victor shifted abruptly in his chair, a small, jarring movement that sent a wave of his cloying cologne, a scent I usually associated with his attempts at charm, suddenly overwhelming my senses, now tainted with a new, unpleasant odor of desperation. "What are you implying?" he demanded, his voice sharp and laced with a barely concealed irritation, though his gaze flickered nervously towards my mother. She sat ramrod straight in her own chair, her lips pressed into a thin, unyielding line, a silent, stony sphinx. Her posture, usually a sign of her composure, now screamed of suppressed fear, or perhaps, guilt. Mr. Langley, unflustered, calmly slid another document towards me. "This signature, from approximately 3 months ago, does not match our records." I stared at the flowing, looping script, a mimicry that bore only a passing, unsettling resemblance to my actual handwriting. It was an imitation, close enough to deceive a casual glance, but clearly not my own. The room seemed to tilt sideways, the floor swaying beneath me, as if the very foundations of my reality were crumbling. "I never signed this," I managed to articulate, the words feeling foreign on my tongue, though true. Victor's face, usually so composed, flushed a deep, alarming crimson. "Don't be ridiculous, Stephanie. You signed it at the house, remember? After your birthday dinner." His voice was dismissive, almost patronizing, an attempt to gaslight me into accepting his version of events. "I was in Chicago on my birthday," I countered, my voice, though still trembling, gaining a surprising surge of strength. "Working a presentation I'd spent weeks preparing for. I never signed anything." The memory of that intense, focused week, far away from their house, cemented my conviction. Victor suddenly rose from his chair, a violent, abrupt motion that sent it crashing backward with a loud thud against the polished floor. "This is absurd. We'll take our business elsewhere." He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh with a shocking force that belied his usual smooth demeanor. "Let's go." His grip was a stark, painful punctuation mark to his rising fury. I pulled away, my arm stinging from the imprint of his nails. "No." My refusal hung in the air, an act of defiance I hadn't known I possessed. His eyes narrowed to slits, his face contorting into a mask of pure rage. "Don't make a scene." His words were a low, dangerous growl. When I didn't move, something primal in Victor snapped. He lunged forward, shoving me hard with both hands. I stumbled backward, the unexpected force sending me crashing against the velvet rope divider. The heavy metal post toppled with a metallic clang that reverberated through the suddenly silent lobby, drawing every eye. A sharp, searing pain bloomed across my collarbone where his nails had torn through my blouse, leaving an angry red scratch that burned as if traced with a lit match. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird, desperate for escape. My mouth filled with a familiar metallic taste, a bitter tang I recognized from childhood, the taste of falls, of fear, of surging adrenaline. This isn't about a loan. The realization, horrifying in its clarity, crashed through me like a wave breaking against jagged rocks. This is identity theft. The words, heavy with the weight of betrayal, tumbled out. My own parents. The thought was sickening. "How could you forge my signature?" I whispered, my voice trembling, barely audible. The words felt strange in my mouth, as if borrowed from someone else's nightmare, a script I never imagined I'd speak. Victor, looming over me, his familiar face completely transformed by an ugly, consuming rage, was a stranger. 11 years ago, when my mother had first brought him home, he'd smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and promised to be the dad you never had. I was 18 then, still raw with grief from my father's death from cancer the year before, achingly vulnerable to his calculated kindness, his perfectly timed empathy. I turned to my mother, searching her face for any flicker of understanding, any sign of shared horror or remorse. "Did you know about this?" But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Instead, her gaze was fixed on her lap, where her hands, usually so graceful, twisted a pristine white tissue into a shredded, unrecognizable mess, a silent testament to her inner turmoil, or perhaps, her complicity. "This can't be legal." The thought, sharp and clear, cut through the emotional fog that threatened to overwhelm me, slicing through the miasma of shock and hurt. The scattered, confusing pieces of the past few months suddenly began to click into place, forming a terrible, undeniable picture. Their sudden, overly keen interest in my recent promotion, the casual, probing questions about my burgeoning savings, the mail that occasionally arrived at my apartment, mysteriously opened by mistake. A security guard, a burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached from across the lobby, his measured, deliberate steps and watchful eyes signaling he had been monitoring the escalating situation for some time. His presence, though intimidating, offered a strange sense of relief, a barrier against Victor's unpredictable fury. Victor's face contorted with a fresh wave of rage, the crimson flush deepening. He jabbed a trembling finger directly at my face. "You ungrateful little." I moved quickly, instinctively, darting behind Mr. Langley's sturdy mahogany desk, putting the solid barrier of wood between us. The desk felt like a fortress, a temporary haven. "I'm not signing anything," I stated, my voice steadier now, surprisingly firm, though my knees still felt like jelly. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely audible, thick with a mix of shame and accusation. "Don't humiliate us here, Stephanie. Family helps family. Family helps family." The words, her lifelong mantra, now rang hollow and manipulative, a weapon she had wielded against me countless times whenever I hesitated to give them what they wanted, money, my precious time, a fierce, unwavering loyalty that, I now realized, had always flowed in one painful, suffocating direction. Victor, attempting to regain some semblance of composure, straightened his jacket with a jerky motion. "You're overreacting. This was just to help with that retail plaza investment. The returns will benefit all of us." The retail plaza. His latest grand scheme, the one that would finally, definitively, make them rich, unlike the failed food truck franchise, the disastrous vacation rentals, or the murky cryptocurrency investment that had, I suspected, swallowed significant chunks of their retirement savings. Mr. Langley cleared his throat, drawing all eyes back to him. Miss Adler, I should inform you that this isn't the first document with your signature that's come through our bank. The ground beneath me seemed to vanish. I gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. What? The word was a choked gasp. There appear to be multiple accounts in your name, he said carefully, his gaze darting between me and Victor, a silent acknowledgement of the volatile dynamic. Credit lines, personal loans. Victor's eyes, now wide with alarm, darted towards the security guard, who now stood at a watchful, but closer, distance. My mother, her face ashen, clutched Victor's arm, her knuckles stark white against the navy blazer, a desperate display of unity. The power dynamic, once veiled, was now painfully clear. They stood united, a force against me, while I stood utterly alone. I need to make a phone call, I managed to say, my voice still shaking, as I fumbled in my purse for my cell phone. Victor, his face a mask of furious desperation, began arguing vehemently with the security guard. I slipped into an empty office, the door closing with a soft click, granting me a brief, blessed moment of privacy. My finger, trembling slightly, already pressed my brother's number. Caleb, I need you. Sunrise Credit Union. Now. My voice, raw with emotion, broke on the last word, the last vestiges of my composure crumbling. 20 minutes later, Caleb's work truck, a familiar battered Ford, screeched into a parking space visible through the bank's tall front windows, the sound a welcome, reassuring arrival. He strode in, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm, wearing paint-splattered jeans and a well-worn flannel shirt with sawdust still clinging to the broad shoulders, evidence of the cabinetry project he'd undoubtedly abandoned mid-saw to come to my rescue. His eyes, usually crinkling with good humor, were sharp with concern. Let me see where he hurt you, he said, his voice low and solicitous, as he gently examined the angry red scratch on my collarbone. His hands, calloused and strong from years of carpentry, were surprisingly tender, a stark contrast to Victor's bruising grip. These were the same hands that had taught me to ride a bike when our father was too sick to do so, the hands that had patiently helped me move into my first apartment, carefully assembling IKEA furniture. In that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of betrayal, the choice before me, once agonizingly complex, suddenly became starkly, beautifully clear. I could pretend this never happened, sacrificing my integrity for a fragile, false peace, or I could take a decisive stand, one that would irrevocably change my relationship with my mother and stepfather, but reclaim my own life. Caleb seemed to read my thoughts, his blue eyes, so strikingly like our father's, holding steady confidence. Document everything. Today, he advised quietly, his voice firm with certainty. Before they come up with a story. The Air Force hadn't just taught him airplane mechanics, I realized. It had given him an unshakable moral compass, a clarity that cut through the emotional fog. I straightened my torn blouse, feeling something deep inside me harden, like concrete setting firmly into place. The shock was receding, replaced by a cold, unwavering resolve. I want to know exactly what they've done. 3 days after the harrowing bank incident, I found myself in Carmen Velasquez's downtown law office, a space that exuded competence and gravitas. Her methodical movements as she spread credit reports across her expansive mahogany desk were both reassuring and unsettling. The walls around us were adorned with framed court decisions, testaments to victories, and the complex details of fraud cases spanning 2 decades, a silent promise of her expertise. Through the large window, the relentless autumn rain blurred the city skyline into an impressionistic watercolor, mirroring the muddled landscape of my emotions. $62,000 in fraudulent debt, Carmen stated, her red-tipped finger tapping a particularly damning page, its stark black and white numbers a chilling indictment. And that's just what we've confirmed so far. The air left my lungs in a single, painful rush. That can't be right. But the evidence lay before me, irrefutable, in meticulously arranged black and white columns, for credit cards maxed out and now languishing in collections, an auto loan application flat out denied due to my suddenly abysmal payment history, a personal loan with a predatory interest rate that Victor had co-signed, using my name both times. The sheer scale of it was dizzying. All statements went to your mother's address, Carmen pointed out, sliding another incriminating document forward. Systematic mail diversion is a common tactic in family identity theft cases. I stared at the unfamiliar P.O. box number listed as my mailing address, a box I had never seen, never authorized. I never set this up. Of course not, Carmen said, her voice laced with a grim certainty. Based on the bank records Howard Langley provided, Victor has been systematically using your identity for at least 3 years. She pulled out another folder, revealing more layers of deceit. And he didn't work alone. This loan officer, Brandon Weiss, processed most of the paperwork. The signature verification flags were manually overridden each time. My throat tightened, a cold, sharp ache, as I grasped the chilling methodical nature of their scheme. They hadn't just reacted to opportunity, they had meticulously planned this as piece by calculated piece. This isn't sloppy theft, Carmen observed, her voice carrying the undeniable weight of extensive experience. This is coordinated identity fraud. She paused, her gaze meeting mine with a flicker of compassion before adding, and unfortunately, it's not Victor's first time. I found a similar pattern of behavior with his first wife's daughter. The revelation sent a cold, sickening wave through me, an icy shock that solidified my resolve. He's done this before. Carmen nodded grimly, her expression confirming the worst. 10 years ago, the case was quietly settled privately. I closed my eyes, memories from my past rearranging themselves with sickening clarity, like pieces of a broken mosaic clicking into their terrible, true positions. Mom's constant guilt trips about how family helps family financially weren't, as I'd naively believed, about occasional, temporary loans. They were, I now understood, subtly laying the groundwork for this massive, insidious theft. Victor's persistent, seemingly proud questions about my work, my bonuses, my recent promotion hadn't been genuine interest, they had been meticulously precise information gathering. The questions about my new apartment, I murmured, a new piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The mail that arrived opened. They weren't accidents, I realized with a fresh pang of betrayal, they were deliberate, calculated acts of surveillance and theft. Caleb's steady voice interrupted my spiraling thoughts as he walked into the office, carrying a welcome tray of coffee. I found something else, he said, his expression grim as he placed a manila folder on Carmen's desk. Stephanie had an inheritance from Dad's life insurance. $20,000 in a trust that matured when she turned 25. I looked up sharply, my eyes wide with disbelief. What inheritance? The surprise was immediate, sharp, and painful. Exactly, Caleb said, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. I found the original paperwork in Dad's old files. The money disappeared 3 months after your 25th birthday. A different kind of pain lanced through me now, not just the raw wound of betrayal, but the devastating realization that they'd stolen something irreplaceable, a legacy, a safety net. They weren't just stealing money, I whispered, the words barely audible. They were stealing my future, my safety net. The security my father had intended for me. Carmen watched me with practiced patience, her eyes conveying a quiet understanding, waiting as I processed each new, crushing blow. What evidence do we need? I finally asked, the question emerging with newfound clarity and resolve as I straightened my spine. Carmen offered a faint, approving smile, a silent acknowledgement of my shift from emotional reaction to strategic planning. She began to outline the meticulous documentation required, the comprehensive affidavit we'd need to prepare, the intricate timeline for both criminal charges and civil restitution. Each detail she shared was a building block in the fortress I was determined to construct against them. This wasn't impulsive, I realized aloud, the insight chilling me. They didn't just take advantage of an opportunity, they created a system. Exactly, Carmen confirmed, her voice carrying the weight of professional experience. And systems leave paper trails. Caleb returned from the small kitchen with a stack of paper cups, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a somber focus. As he handed me one, he shared what his background check on Victor had revealed: a disturbing history of gambling debts, a string of failed investments, and 3 collection judgments in the past year alone. "And Mom," Caleb added, his expression tightening with a fresh layer of disappointment. "She secretly owns rental property on Maple View Street while claiming constant financial hardship to you." The depth of their deception felt boundless. Carmen leafed through another file. "Victor's facing potential criminal charges from other creditors. If he doesn't find money soon, he could be looking at jail time for fraud completely unrelated to your case." The walls were closing in on him, I realized, and I was just one of many victims. "They're not cartoon villains," I said, surprising myself with the observation. "They're just people trapped in lies that kept growing, escalating, until they consumed everything." My phone vibrated with a voicemail notification, startling me. Mom's tearful voice, thick with feigned remorse, filled the small office when I played it on speaker. "Stephanie, please call us. Victor said it would just be temporary, just to get us through. We never meant for it to go this far." Carmen exchanged a meaningful, knowing glance with Caleb. We all recognized the practiced manipulation beneath the crocodile tears. A text message arrived almost immediately from a mutual friend, the words a chilling echo of Victor's true intentions. "Victor says, you're overreacting. You think anyone will believe you over your mother?" The threat landed with precise, calculated aim, targeting my deepest insecurity, my lifelong vulnerability to their emotional blackmail. But instead of doubt, instead of fear, I felt a strange, hardening clarity. "They have nothing left to lose," I said, understanding the true danger of their desperation for the first time, which makes them even more dangerous. Carmen closed a folder with a decisive, resonant snap. "We pursue this on 2 tracks. Criminal charges for the identity theft and fraud, and civil action for financial restitution. We hit them hard, from every angle." Caleb leaned forward, his forearms resting on his jeans, his presence a solid, reassuring anchor. "My spare room is yours for as long as you need. The bungalow has good locks and nosy neighbors. You're safe there." "Howard Langley called this morning," Carmen added, her voice crisp with efficiency, providing copies of all suspicious transactions going back 5 years. "The bank is fully cooperating. And the bank is issuing a victim affidavit to help clear your credit," Caleb said, sliding a business card across the desk. "This is the fraud department contact. You're not alone in fighting this." A lump formed in my throat, thick with gratitude, at their coordinated, unwavering support. Just 3 days ago, I had stood utterly alone, a solitary figure against my parents' combined force in that intimidating bank lobby. Now, a formidable team flanked me, their commitment a palpable, powerful force. "You're not fighting alone," Carmen reiterated, as if reading my very thoughts. "That's what they're counting on. That family obligation, that ingrained loyalty, would keep you isolated, silent." I studied the burgeoning mountain of paperwork before us, no longer seeing just betrayal, but also the clear, undeniable path forward, a blueprint for justice. A new, unexpected strength settled in my chest, firm and resolute, as I reached for a pen. "Let's get to work," I said, my voice steady, turning to the first affidavit, ready to begin the long, arduous fight. Later that day, Victor's old laptop sat on my kitchen table, a silent, ominous black box containing untold secrets. Caleb had found it yesterday, almost an afterthought, forgotten in the dim recesses of the back of my coat closet. "Check if there's anything useful on it," he'd suggested, his voice carefully neutral, hiding his own burgeoning hopes. My fingers, still trembling slightly, typed in the password. "My birthday, of course." The screen flickered to life, revealing a desktop cluttered with a chaotic array of icons. I clicked methodically through folders, searching for anything remotely related to finances. Nothing. Just old vacation photos, mundane work documents, digital detritus. I was about to give up, my shoulders slumping in disappointment, when I noticed a folder labeled Investment Tracking. Inside, a single Excel file, innocently named Property Management, caught my eye. I clicked, and a password prompt appeared. I tried my birthday again. Access denied. My mother's birthday. Access denied. Then, on a hunch, I typed their anniversary date. The screen unlocked with a soft whir. The spreadsheet bloomed across my screen, a horrifying kaleidoscope of information. Tabs upon tabs of color-coded data, meticulously organized. My stomach dropped, a cold, heavy weight, as I scanned the first worksheet. It was a painstaking tracking system of credit cards, each listed with payment due dates, available credit limits, and crucial notes, all, sickeningly, in my name. I clicked through each tab with growing horror, my breath catching in my throat. One tab meticulously tracked credit bureau reporting dates, another listed payment minimums with chilling notes like pay $50 above minimum to maintain good status. And then, I found the smoking gun, the unequivocal proof of their systematic predation, a tab labeled SA Accounts, My Accounts, every single one of them, checking, savings, retirement, even detailed notes on my direct deposit schedule. My blood turned to ice water in my veins as I read a particular note, bonus expected March 15th, $4,200 after tax. How, I wondered, with a fresh wave of nausea, could they possibly know that? I clicked to the next tab, and there it was, an email exchange between Victor and Brandon Weiss, the very loan officer at Sunrise Credit Union. The emails discussed, in chilling detail, the refinancing opportunity using my forged signature. Remember to use the sample from the application, not the signature card, Brandon had written, offering advice on how to bypass the bank's safeguards. Less chance of questions that way. I scrolled through more emails, my hands trembling so violently I almost dropped the laptop. Victor's reply, cold and calculating. Lillian found the perfect signature in her keepsake box from Steph's high school graduation card. Vintage Stephanie before she changed how she writes her name. My mother. Not just passively complicit, but actively, malevolently helping him, selecting the perfect blueprint for their forgery. The final, devastating piece of the puzzle clicked into place as I found a document tracking my work travel schedule, with precise notations of when packages and mail were successfully intercepted. They waited until I was gone, took my mail, then meticulously replaced it before I returned. My phone vibrated, jolting me back to the present. Carmen calling back. I answered, my voice, to my own surprise, steadier than I felt. I found it, I told her, the words a torrent. A spreadsheet tracking everything, accounts, credit limits, payment schedules, emails between Victor and Brandon Weiss, and even notes from my mother about which signature to use. This is exactly what we needed, Carmen said, her voice betraying a hint of professional excitement despite the gravity of the discovery. This spreadsheet, coupled with the emails, proves premeditation and conspiracy. Can you email it to me right away and then make a backup, a physical copy? I sent the file immediately, then sat back in my chair, a strange, almost unsettling calm settling over me. For weeks, I had been stumbling through a dense fog of confusion and betrayal, desperate to understand the full scope of their deception. Now, the picture was brutally, horrifyingly clear. I understand what they did now, I told Carmen, my voice imbued with a newfound strength. And I can prove it. Sunday afternoon, the golden autumn light slanted in long, gentle beams through the majestic maple trees lining my parents' street. I had chosen this time deliberately, meticulously, with a cold, strategic precision. Neighbors were out walking their dogs, tending to their meticulously manicured gardens, washing their cars. Witnesses. Caleb parked his work truck at the curb, its familiar presence a comforting anchor. Ready, he asked, his voice low, squeezing my hand, a silent promise of unwavering support. I nodded, clutching my leather portfolio to my chest like a shield. Inside, printed copies of the damning spreadsheet, the incriminating emails, and a restraining order application already filled out, waiting for its next step. All I needed was Victor's signature acknowledging he'd seen it, or an officer to serve it. We walked up the familiar brick path to the white colonial, the house where I had spent my teen years, a place now stripped of its innocent memories. The doorbell echoed inside, a hollow, unsettling sound. Footsteps approached, heavy and deliberate. Victor opened the door, his usual confident, easy smile faltering, then completely vanishing when he saw Caleb's towering, protective presence behind me. "Stephanie," he said, his voice tight, laced with an unnerving mixture of surprise and suspicion. "This is unexpected." "We need to talk," I said, my voice clear and strong, devoid of its earlier tremor. "All of us." My mother appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands nervously on a dish towel, her face paling visibly when she saw my determined expression. "Stephanie, what's going on?" Her words were a desperate plea, an attempt to regain control. "May we come in?" I asked, already stepping forward, not waiting for permission. This house, once a source of comfort and intimidation, no longer held any power over me. In the living room, Victor stood by the fireplace, an old habit, trying to position himself higher, to appear dominant, in control. Caleb, sensing the unspoken challenge, positioned himself subtly between us, arms crossed, a silent, unyielding barrier. "What's this about?" Victor demanded, his voice rising, edged with a rising hysteria. "We've been trying to call you for days." I placed my leather portfolio on the polished coffee table with a deliberate movement, then, with equal purpose, pulled out the first document, a printed copy of his meticulously kept, incriminating spreadsheet. "I have the spreadsheets, Victor," I said evenly, my voice a calm, unwavering counterpoint to his escalating agitation. "And Brandon Weiss is cooperating fully with the authorities." The color visibly drained from his face, leaving it ashen. My mother, her resolve crumbling, sank onto the sofa, her hands fluttering in her lap like trapped birds. "I don't know what you're talking about," he tried to bluster, but his voice lacked conviction, a desperate, hollow sound. I pulled out the emails next, laying them out like cards on a poker table. Account 45621, opened January 14th. Account 78302, opened March 8th. The city card with a $24,000 limit that's currently maxed out, thanks to your spending. Victor's eyes darted nervously to the window. Mr. Peterson, their next-door neighbor, was trimming his hedges just outside, meticulously, deliberately, pretending not to watch, but his attention was clearly fixed on the drama unfolding within the house. "Stephanie," my mother whispered, her voice a thin, reedy sound, broken now. "We were going to pay it all back before you even knew. It was just temporary." "Like you paid back your first wife's daughter?" I asked, watching Victor flinch visibly at the unexpected blow. "Yes, I know about that, too. Carmen found out everything." Victor took a menacing step forward, his eyes burning with renewed fury, but Caleb shifted subtly, a silent, formidable reminder of his presence and his protective stance. Victor stopped mid-stride, deflating. "This is a family matter," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "We can work this out privately, without involving anyone else." I removed the restraining order application from my portfolio, its official white pages a stark contrast to their deceit. "Sign this acknowledging you've seen it, or the police will deliver it. Your choice." My voice was calm, controlled, utterly without emotion. "You wouldn't," my mother gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief, her last illusion of control shattering. "She already has," Caleb said quietly, his voice a steady, unwavering force. "The police are just waiting for our call, waiting for us to confirm you refuse to sign." Victor stared at the document, his jaw working, his eyes flitting between the paper and Caleb. Then, with shaking, defeated hands, he took my pen and signed, his penmanship jagged and spiky, a visible manifestation of his suppressed rage. "This isn't over," he said, his eyes narrowed, a veiled threat in his tone. "Actually, it is," I replied, gathering the papers with a sense of finality, reclaiming control. The bank is freezing all the fraudulent accounts, and any attempt to contact me violates this order. Any phone call, any text, any email. You understand? I stood back straight, chin held high, no longer the vulnerable victim. Through the window, I could clearly see 3 neighbors now clustered, whispering animatedly, behind Mr. Peterson's hedge. Perfect. Let's go, I told Caleb, turning my back on my parents, a decisive, symbolic gesture, and walked towards the door. Behind me, I heard my mother begin to sob, a choked, ragged sound, but I didn't turn around. The crisp autumn air felt clean, exhilarating, as we stepped outside, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of their lies. I walked to the truck without looking back, feeling taller, stronger, with each determined step. At Caleb's bungalow, the comforting aroma of garlic and tomatoes filled the kitchen, a fragrant embrace after the bitter confrontation. Carmen had arrived early, her arms laden with bags of delicious Italian takeout and a celebratory bottle of champagne. To facing down bullies, Caleb toasted, raising his glass, his eyes sparkling with pride, just like when we were kids. Except now we have the law on our side, Carmen added, her professional demeanor softening with a rare, genuine smile of pride. You handled that perfectly, Stephanie. The documentation you provided is impeccable, thorough, undeniable. My phone rang, a sudden, jarring sound. Howard Langley's name flashed on the screen, a beacon of resolution. Miss Adler, he said formally, his voice relieved. I wanted to let you know that Brandon Weiss has officially confessed to bank fraud. He's provided a full, detailed statement to the authorities about his systematic involvement with your stepfather. Thank you, I said, a profound weight lifting from my shoulders, for everything, Howard. We had barely hung up when there was a gentle knock at the door. Mrs. Garcia from 2 houses down stood on the porch, a warm, fragrant apple pie nestled in her hands, still radiating heat from her oven. I saw what happened earlier, she said, her voice filled with a quiet, knowing sympathy, pressing the pie into my hands. We always thought Victor was strange about money. Too many get-rich-quick schemes, too much flash. She squeezed my arm gently. You did the right thing, honey. After she left, I sat on Caleb's porch swing, the familiar creak a comforting rhythm, watching the last vestiges of evening light fade behind the towering oak trees. The pie cooled on the table beside me, its sweet cinnamon scent mingling with the crisp autumn air, a poignant reminder of simple kindness. For the first time since this started, I feel clean again, I told Carmen and Caleb as they joined me on the porch, their presence a silent, unwavering support. I took a deep, cleansing breath, weighing the question that had been hovering in my mind all day, a crucial decision point. Do I push for full criminal charges now, or wait to see what else they've done, what other hidden betrayals might surface? Carmen started to answer, her mouth opening, but I raised my hand, a gesture of quiet authority. Not tonight, I said, my voice firm. Tonight we celebrate this victory, this first step towards reclaiming my life. Tomorrow we plan the next one. And for the very first time in weeks, my smile felt genuine, unforced, a true reflection of the dawning hope within me. 1 week had passed since the climactic confrontation with Victor and Lillian, the memory of Victor's furious, defeated face still vivid in my mind. The initial rush of victory had slowly receded, replaced by something cooler, more calculated, a steady, unwavering resolve. I sat in Carmen's law office, the familiar scent of coffee and lemon polish filling the air, a sanctuary of order and purpose. I meticulously spread color-coded files across her cherrywood desk, arranging them in perfect, chronological order, a tangible representation of the methodical strategy we were building. We need to think of this like constructing a building, I told Carmen, placing a fresh yellow legal pad beside the neat stack. Foundation first, then framework, then the finishing details. Carmen nodded, her silver-streaked hair catching the afternoon light filtering through the tall windows as she reviewed Victor's bankruptcy filing from 2017, her eyes keen and focused. You've got the right mindset now, Stephanie. The emotional confrontation was necessary, a crucial first step, but it won't be enough to secure a lasting victory. I tapped my pen against the rental property documents Caleb had diligently discovered, the proof of my mother's deceit. Mother never reported this income on her taxes, not once in 6 years. That's a significant vulnerability. Leverage, Carmen stated simply, her one word encapsulating the strategic advantage. We spent the next 3 intense hours dissecting their vulnerabilities, mapping out a comprehensive, 3-phase strategy: criminal charges for the systematic identity theft, civil restitution for the extensive financial damages incurred, and a separate, parallel track for the meticulous restoration of my shattered credit. With each document we examined, each detail we uncovered, I felt myself hardening, growing stronger, like concrete setting firmly in its forms. I'm studying fraud statutes every night, I told Carmen, opening my laptop to reveal a series of neatly bookmarked legal resources. Knowledge is protection. I need to understand every angle. You're approaching this exactly right, she affirmed, her gaze approving. When do you want to file the police report? The sooner, the better. Tuesday, I replied without hesitation. After I finish documenting the last credit card account. Every single detail needs to be meticulously recorded. The words came easily now, flowing forth without the tremor that had once accompanied any thought of taking legal action against my own mother. Carmen raised an eyebrow, a subtle flicker of surprise. You're maintaining remarkable emotional distance, Stephanie. That's a crucial strength. I need to think clearly, not angrily, I replied, surprising myself with the unwavering steadiness in my voice, the clarity of my purpose. We're not just throwing punches in a bank lobby anymore. We're building a case, brick by painstaking brick, a case that cannot be dismissed, cannot be undone. Later that evening, the rhythmic whir of an electric screwdriver filled the air as Caleb drilled mounting brackets into the eaves of his craftsman bungalow. He was installing the third security camera, his brow furrowed in concentration. One more at the back door, he said, wiping sweat from his forehead with his forearm. Then we'll install the same system at your apartment tomorrow. No more surprises. I held the ladder steady, watching my brother work with the same methodical precision he applied to his intricate cabinetry. Carmen is coordinating directly with the bank's fraud department, I updated him. They're sending complete transaction histories going back 5 years. A full accounting. Caleb nodded, his focus unwavering as he adjusted the camera angle, ensuring optimal coverage. Good. The more documentation, the better, Steph. Leave no stone unturned. Inside, my laptop screen glowed with the stark reality of a spreadsheet tracking every unauthorized account, every single forged signature, every stolen dollar amount. I had, in a strange twist of fate, become a forensic accountant of my own victimization, meticulously cataloging their betrayals with a cold, almost clinical precision. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Background check confirms similar pattern with Victor's previous stepdaughter. Call me when you get a chance. When I called, her voice was tight with a controlled anger that mirrored my own. He's done this before, Stephanie. Different tactics, but the same devastating outcome. We can potentially use this under pattern of behavior evidence, further solidifying our criminal charges. I added this chilling detail to our growing arsenal, feeling not satisfaction, but a professional sense of thoroughness, a grim determination. We were building connections with the bank's security teams, credit bureau investigators, identity theft specialists, forming a formidable network that would eventually close around Victor and Lillian like an inescapable net. That evening, Carmen's face appeared solemn on my video call, her usual unflappable demeanor tinged with concern. I found a problem. The statute of limitations on the oldest fraudulent accounts. We can't include those in the criminal complaint. They're legally past the point of prosecution. For a moment, the old, familiar panic fluttered in my chest, a chilling echo of past helplessness. How many accounts are we losing? 3. But that's not all. Carmen shuffled papers off-screen, a faint rustle of impending bad news. Victor has retained Jonathan Mercer. My stomach dropped, a heavy, leaden weight. The fraud defense attorney from the infamous Westlake case. The one who got his client off with a slap on the wrist. She nodded grimly, confirming my worst fears. They still have resources despite the restraining order. Connections we didn't account for, a deeper network than we imagined. I absorbed this new blow, a punch to the gut, then straightened my shoulders, refusing to cede ground. We'll focus on the most recent violations, I stated, my voice firm. Those are ironclad, undeniable. We need to file quickly, Carmen warned, urgency now lacing her tone, before more evidence conveniently disappears, or before Mercer builds his defense strategy. I closed the video call and stared at my meticulously organized files, the product of countless hours of diligent work. The strategy, I knew, needed immediate adjustment, but the core foundation remained solid, unbreakable. I wouldn't be outmaneuvered by the people who had taught me to play chess on Sunday afternoons, teaching me strategy, only to then decide to make me a helpless pawn in their own twisted financial games. Tomorrow, we would continue building our case, block by careful block, not with the desperate rage of the betrayed, but with the cold, unyielding precision of an architect of justice. The next morning, after a quick but necessary trip to the bank to finalize documentation on the last problematic account, I returned to Carmen's conference room, spreading color-coded files across the polished table. Each folder represented a different, meticulously prepared aspect of my growing case against Victor and my mother. The familiar scent of coffee and lemon polish, a constant presence in Carmen's office, felt less like a comfort and more like a sign of serious business. The morning light filtered through the Venetian blinds, casting long, thin stripes across the mahogany surface, illuminating the gravity of the task at hand. "This is everything," I said, my voice resonating with a quiet authority, tapping the red folder. The criminal complaint, thoroughly reviewed and with crucial input from Jackson Reeves at the prosecutor's office. This ensures maximum impact on the identity theft charges. Carmen nodded, her gaze sharp and focused as she flipped through the weighty document. "The prosecutor was indeed impressed with your documentation, Stephanie. Victor's pattern of deception goes back further and is more systematic than most cases they handle." Caleb, looking notably more worn than usual, set down 3 thick binders on the edge of the table. "Family history timeline," he said quietly, his voice laced with fatigue. "It shows, in chilling detail, how they escalated from small, subtle boundary violations to full-blown financial manipulation. I'd never seen my brother look so tired. The past 3 intense weeks had hollowed his cheeks and darkened the skin beneath his eyes. He'd been working tirelessly, pulling overtime to help me while simultaneously trying to maintain his own demanding cabinetry business. His hands, usually so steady with the fine, delicate work of woodworking, now had a slight, almost imperceptible tremor as he meticulously arranged the binders in chronological order. "The credit bureaus have been officially notified," Carmen said, methodically checking off items on her legal pad. "They've placed comprehensive fraud flags on all your accounts. That should effectively prevent any new, unauthorized accounts from being opened." A small, vital sense of relief settled in my chest. "Howard also sent over the bank's complete internal investigation file," I added, indicating the blue folder. "And Brandon Weiss gave a full, detailed statement about Victor's specific instructions for handling my forged paperwork, how to bypass the system." I stood back, surveying the comprehensive, irrefutable documentation of my parents' betrayal, meticulous witness statements, damning bank records, shattered credit reports, precise transaction histories, a sprawling, undeniable paper trail of calculated deception spanning years. "We're not just stopping them," I said, the words tasting like certainty on my tongue, solid and unwavering. "We're making sure they can't do this to anyone else again. We're setting a precedent." Carmen studied my face, her expression unreadable. "Are you truly ready for tomorrow, Stephanie? Once we file these charges, there's no going back. The path is set." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed, a sudden, jarring vibration. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, Miss Adler. This is Officer Merritt, Palm Lakes Police Department. There's been a break-in at your apartment. God alert. The words hit me like a physical blow, cold and heavy. Was anything taken? Anything valuable? Not taken, Miss Adler. Destroyed. I think you should come see for yourself. Her voice was grim, devoid of emotion. 30 minutes later, I stood in my kitchen, the sickening crunch of glass under my shoes echoing the chaos around me. The apartment I had kept meticulously organized, a sanctuary of order, was unrecognizable. Cabinet doors hung precariously from broken hinges, splintered and useless. Drawers had been violently emptied onto the floor, their contents scattered and broken. Every framed photograph of loved ones and cherished memories lay shattered, glass shards glistening amidst the debris. But it was the kitchen wall that made my breath catch, a visceral, primal scream of violation. In stark, dripping red spray paint, 3 feet high, family first. Officer Merritt, her face a mask of professionalism, methodically documented the damage with her camera, the flash illuminating the malevolent, dripping letters. The building manager found it when a neighbor reported hearing glass breaking, she explained, her voice clipped. Security camera in the hallway was disabled first thing, but we're checking street cameras. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. This is a restraining order violation, Caleb said, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger, his hands clenched into fists. Victor was ordered to stay 500 feet away from Stephanie, from her home. I stepped carefully around the broken dishes, my eyes scanning the wreckage, noticing with chilling clarity that my file cabinet had been pried open, papers shredded and scattered like grotesque confetti. My home office looked like it had been hit by a localized tornado, laptop screen shattered, printer smashed beyond repair. They're looking for the evidence, I whispered, a cold, terrifying realization washing over me. They don't know we've already copied everything, that it's all safely stored elsewhere. Later, at the police station filing the report, the sergeant, a burly man with kind eyes, asked, "Any idea what they were after, Miss Adler?" "Everything," I answered, watching him type my statement with deliberate, practiced movements. "But mainly, they wanted to scare me into backing down, to retreat into silence." "Did it work?" he asked, glancing up, his gaze piercing. I thought about the stark red letters dripping down my kitchen wall, the brutal, unmistakable warning, cross family, face consequences. "No," I said firmly, my voice unwavering. "It just proves I'm doing the right thing. It proves I'm close to breaking them." Back at Caleb's bungalow, Carmen arrived with takeout food, but nobody touched their containers. Her face was grim as she looked at the photos from my apartment, her jaw tight. "There's more," she said, setting aside her untouched container. "Victor has been asking pointed questions about my previous cases. My assistant overheard him in the courthouse yesterday, brazenly trying to get information from the clerk about cases I've lost. He's looking for ways to discredit you," I said, a new, unsettling fear surfacing, a chilling reminder of his ruthlessness. "Should I find another attorney, Carmen? I don't want to put you at risk because of this." Carmen's expression hardened, her eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "Absolutely not, Stephanie. This is exactly why I specialize in family financial fraud. These intimidation tactics, this dirty game, are textbook for perpetrators like Victor. They won't work on me." We worked late into the night, bolstering our defenses, strengthening security protocols. Caleb installed additional cameras at both his house and Carmen's office, creating a network of vigilant eyes. I, in turn, meticulously cataloged every document we had compiled, creating duplicate sets, stored securely in separate, undisclosed locations. We were leaving nothing to chance. The next morning, a solemn quiet settled over us as we gathered for our final, pivotal preparation meeting. Prosecutor Jackson Reeves, his silver hair and neatly tied bow tie making him look more like a distinguished professor than a seasoned legal fighter, joined us, his presence adding an undeniable weight of authority. All documentation is meticulously indexed and ready for court filing, Carmen reported, sliding a thick binder towards him. We've also significantly enhanced security at all relevant locations following yesterday's break-in at Stephanie's apartment. Jackson Reeves reviewed the evidence summary, nodding slowly, thoughtfully, as he turned the pages, absorbing the comprehensive details. This is exceptional work, truly. I rarely see identity theft cases documented this thoroughly, this meticulously, even from seasoned investigators. Caleb placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, his grip firm and steady. You've done everything right, Steph. They can't run anymore, and they can't hide from this. I looked around the table at my small, formidable team. Not family by blood, but bound by something far stronger, integrity, a shared commitment to justice. Carmen organizing files with her meticulous precision. Jackson flagging key documents with his colored tabs, marking them for impact. Caleb, a constant, steady, vigilant presence beside me. This is the most comprehensive fraud case I've built in 20 years, Carmen said, closing the master file with a decisive, resonant snap, the sound echoing in the quiet room. We file criminal charges tomorrow. First thing. Tomorrow? The word hung in the air, not a question, but a profound, almost sacred promise. The planning phase was finally over. The legal machinery was about to engage, to grind forward with unstoppable force. I thought of Victor's spray-painted message on my kitchen wall, family first, and felt something settle deep inside me. Not peace, exactly, not yet. But readiness. A quiet, unshakable readiness. I'm ready, I said, my voice unwavering, surprising even myself. And for the first time since this nightmare began, my voice didn't shake at all. The morning sun hadn't yet managed to burn through the stubborn autumn fog when my phone vibrated against Caleb's coffee table. It was Carmen, calling 3 hours earlier than our scheduled check-in. They vandalized the lake cabin, she said without preamble, her voice tight with controlled anger. Sheriff called it in. Broken windows, spray paint on the walls, more of their calling card. I bolted upright, the sudden movement spilling lukewarm coffee across my lap, the unwelcome warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread spreading through me. How bad? Bad enough. Your family photo albums were shredded, Stephanie. Pages scattered across the dock, floating in the water. Her voice dropped to a grim whisper, conveying the depth of the personal violation. There's more. Victor filed an emergency petition with the court this morning, claiming you're mentally unstable and that you invented this whole fraud scenario after a heated family disagreement over the retail development. I filed charges already, I said, the coffee mug slipping from my fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull, sickening thud. Somehow, the fact that it didn't shatter felt more ominous, more unsettling than if it had broken into 1,000 pieces. He can't do that, I whispered, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my profound uncertainty, my fear that this new tactic might somehow work. He absolutely can try, Stephanie, Carmen corrected, her voice firm. His attorney is claiming you authorized those loans but then changed your mind when you and Victor argued over that ill-fated retail development. They're trying desperately to delay the prosecutor's review, which is scheduled for today. My stomach knotted, a tight, painful ball of anxiety, as a text notification popped up from Marjorie, my mother's oldest, dearest friend. Stephanie, your mother is heartbroken. How could you turn on your own family this way? They're working the church crowd, I said, scrolling through 3 more messages, each one more accusatory, more emotionally manipulative than the last. Mom's calling everyone she knows, saying I've turned cruel, that I'm having a breakdown. Classic manipulation tactic, Carmen replied, her voice unwavering. They're scrambling, Stephanie, desperate to control the narrative. Look, we need to move now. I'm filing for an emergency hearing to address these false, malicious claims immediately. Through the kitchen window, I spotted Caleb striding across the dew-kissed lawn, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing emphatically, a familiar sign of his intensity. When he caught my eye, he gave me a firm thumbs up, a silent, reassuring message of support. "Caleb," I called out, "those wildlife cameras you installed at the cabin during the weekend." "Perfect," Carmen interrupted, a flicker of hope in her voice. "Those cameras timestamp images with GPS data. If they caught Victor trespassing, that's a direct violation of the restraining order, another criminal charge." I heard her typing rapidly, furiously. "Can Caleb get those photos to me within the hour?" The front door swung open as Caleb entered, already nodding, his face grim but determined. "Downloading them now." Got clear shots of Victor smashing the family room window at 5:32 this morning. His red Buick is clearly visible in at least 4 different frames. It's undeniable. My phone pinged with another text, this one from Pastor Willard, a man I had respected my entire life. "Your mother was in tears during prayer group. Family reconciliation is God's highest calling, Stephanie." "They planned this," I said, the realization landing like a physical blow, cold and hard. "Filing the petition on the exact same day the prosecutor reviews our case, destroying the cabin, turning the church against me. It's perfectly coordinated." Carmen's voice hardened, her professional demeanor steeling with a renewed resolve. "We're delivering the full evidence package to the prosecutor today with an urgent request for an arrest warrant, not just for the vandalism, but for the ongoing fraud. We have the bank security footage showing Victor forging your signatures. They've overplayed their hand, Stephanie. This, ironically, only strengthens our case. It shows their desperation." While Caleb worked quickly to download the security footage, I showered and dressed in the navy pantsuit I usually reserved for high-stakes client presentations. The familiar routine of applying makeup, of preparing for battle, miraculously steadied my trembling hands. They wanted me frantic, off-balance, vulnerable. I refused to give them that satisfaction. By noon, Carmen had filed our meticulously prepared response to Victor's emergency petition, attaching the damning cabin photos with their irrefutable timestamps. My phone continued buzzing incessantly with messages from church members and family friends, each one repeating my mother's carefully practiced script, her plaintive, manipulative narrative, "We just want our daughter back. This is all just a family misunderstanding. Half the congregation probably believes I'm having some kind of breakdown," I told Carmen when she called with an update, a wry, bitter humor in my voice. My mother's playing the heartbroken parent routine perfectly, with Oscar-worthy precision. "Let them," Carmen said firmly, unconcerned by their theatrics. "The judge doesn't care about church gossip or tearful performances. She cares about evidence, and we have plenty." The emergency hearing is officially scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. Tomorrow? My voice caught in my throat, a sudden gasp. That's so fast, so sudden. Exactly what we wanted, Stephanie. No delays. No time for them to manufacture more lies, to build a new defense. She paused, her voice softening slightly. "Stephanie, there's more news. The prosecutor just issued an arrest warrant for Victor based on the restraining order violation and the vandalism at the cabin." The world seemed to still around me, the cacophony of my thoughts momentarily silenced. "When will they arrest him?" "Tonight, most likely. Officers are already looking for him, actively searching." Carmen's voice gentled further, recognizing the enormity of the moment. "This is happening, Stephanie. Are you prepared to see them in court tomorrow? To face them head-on?" Am I prepared? The question echoed in the quiet room as I spread our compiled evidence across Caleb's dining room table, the cold, hard financial records, the undeniable forged signatures, the cabin security footage showing Victor's uncontrolled rage as he tore through cherished family mementos. My phone rang again, startling me. Unknown number. "Is this Stephanie Adler?" a man's voice asked, formal and official. Yes. Officer Reeves, County Sheriff's Department. We've detained Victor Keene for violation of your restraining order and property damage at the lake cabin. He's being processed now. I thanked him, my voice surprisingly steady, and immediately updated Caleb, who had been standing guard since we received an alert about suspicious activity near his bungalow, his vigilance unwavering. You should try to rest, he said, checking the locks again, his face etched with worry. Tomorrow's going to be intense, Steph. But rest was impossible. As I reviewed my testimony one last time, mentally preparing to face the parents who had so profoundly betrayed me, I was struck by how utterly different this felt from our initial confrontation at their house weeks ago. That, I now understood, was merely a skirmish. Tomorrow was war, a battle for my very identity and future. Near midnight, Carmen's text chimed, a quiet promise in the darkness, just finished prepping our case. Tomorrow we end this permanently. I stepped onto Caleb's back porch, breathing in the crisp, cool autumn air. The stars overhead seemed impossibly bright, sparkling with a cold indifference to human concerns like betrayal and justice. My old life had burned down the moment Howard Langley slid those forged loan documents across his desk, revealing the depth of their deception. Tomorrow, from those ashes, something new, something stronger, would rise. A final, insidious text from an unknown number lit up my phone. We're still your parents. It's not too late to drop this. I deleted it without responding, without even a flicker of hesitation, and turned my phone off. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. The morning sun hadn't quite burned through the last tendrils of lingering fog when I found myself sitting in the county courthouse, my fingers tracing the polished, cool wooden bench beneath me. Sunlight, hesitant at first, then bolder, streamed through the tall arched windows, casting long, geometric rectangles across the pristine marble floor where countless dust motes danced in suspended animation, ethereal and indifferent. The room, with its hushed reverence, smelled of lemon polish and old books, a cathedral to order and law that somehow made my racing, frantic heart feel sacrilegious, out of place. The courtroom began to fill steadily, a slow, inexorable tide of humanity. Church members from my mother's congregation, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Neighbors whose curtains had twitched when the police came to my apartment. Coworkers who had graciously covered my shifts when I couldn't face leaving Caleb's protective bungalow. Each face represented a potential witness to whatever was about to unfold, public accountability in its rawest, most unforgiving form. Caleb leaned close, his solid shoulder pressed against mine, a comforting anchor in the rising tide of anxiety. You okay? He whispered, his eyes scanning the growing crowd, ever watchful. I'm ready, I answered, surprised to find that it was true, the words ringing with an unexpected resonance. Carmen, a picture of calm efficiency, sat beside me, arranging documents with practiced precision. The prosecutor, Jackson Reeves, conferred with her briefly, his silver hair gleaming under the courtroom lights, his navy suit and confident posture telegraphing an undeniable authority. He then took his position, a formidable legal fighter. A ripple of whispers, a collective gasp of recognition, spread through the gallery. My mother and Victor entered through the side door, their attorney, Lawrence Bentley, a silver-haired man with the smooth confidence of a seasoned player, positioned strategically between them. They had dressed like concerned, upstanding citizens visiting a school principal, Victor in a muted gray suit, appearing somber and contrite, my mother in a cream-colored dress with a soft cardigan that made her look smaller, more fragile, deliberately cultivating an image of vulnerability. The costume of worried parents, not perpetrators. Classic intimidation technique, Carmen murmured, her voice barely audible. They're playing the reasonable, aggrieved family card, trying to curry sympathy. The judge, Eleanora Winters, a woman known for her piercing intellect and her utter intolerance for theatrics, entered the courtroom, and we all rose in unison. She surveyed the room with shrewd, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, her gaze sweeping over every face. Perfect, I thought. This judge would see through their act. Victor's attorney, Lawrence Bentley, presented their case first, his voice carrying the smooth, practiced confidence of someone accustomed to being believed, accustomed to winning. "Your Honor," he began, his hands spread wide in a gesture of magnanimous reasonableness, "this is fundamentally a deeply unfortunate misunderstanding between family members. The Keens were simply trying to help their daughter, Miss Adler, through what they perceived to be difficult financial straits. Miss Adler, in a moment of familial accord, authorized these transactions, but has since, regrettably, changed her mind following a deeply personal disagreement." My fingernails dug crescent-shaped indentations into my palms, a desperate anchor to reality. The lie was so bold, so complete, so utterly convincing that for a terrifying moment, I truly wondered if I had imagined the last few months, if my memories were simply fabrications of a wounded mind. When my mother took the stand, her performance was nothing short of masterful. Tears glimmered in her eyes, but never quite fell, a carefully controlled display of emotion as she described their profound concern for me. "We only wanted to help Stephanie," she said, her voice trembling just enough to convey vulnerability. "Stephanie has always been a little impulsive with money, you see. We were just trying to protect her, to guide her." The old, familiar guilt, a corrosive poison, rose in my throat like bile. Family helps family. The insidious mantra of my childhood, the very chain around my neck, now weaponized against me in a court of law. Then Carmen rose for cross-examination, her presence a stark, powerful contrast to Bentley's showmanship. She approached the witness stand with the calm, unwavering precision of a surgeon, her demeanor utterly composed. "Mrs. Keen," Carmen began, her voice clear and resonant, "you stated unequivocally that your daughter authorized these loans. Could you please tell the court, with specificity, when and where that authorization happened?" My mother hesitated, her eyes darting nervously to Victor, a silent plea for guidance, for a lifeline. "Well, we discussed it several times, you know, at family dinners. Very casual. Specific dates, please, Mrs. Keen." The court requires precision. Another agonizing hesitation. "Last February, I believe. After her birthday." "Yes, that's right." Carmen picked up a document, her movements deliberate and impactful. According to Miss Adler's employer, she was in Chicago on that exact date, presenting at a major logistics conference. "I have her hotel receipt, her plane tickets, and her conference registration here, all in evidence." My mother's face flushed a deep, uncomfortable red, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. "Then it must have been March." "Yes, March." "Interesting." Carmen's voice remained conversational, almost deceptively mild, but her eyes were sharp, piercing. "Because the first fraudulent credit card was opened in January, Mrs. Keen. Months before this supposed authorization." "How do you explain that discrepancy?" Carmen continued, systematically and expertly dismantling my mother's fabricated timeline, brick by painstaking brick. With each undeniable contradiction, my mother visibly shrank further into herself, her carefully crafted image crumbling into dust. The prosecutor, Jackson Reeves, then took over, his turn at bat. He presented a compelling visual display of the meticulously constructed evidence timeline, laying out the sequence of deceptions for the judge and jury. Brandon Weiss, the loan officer, looking hollow-eyed and visibly nervous, testified about Victor's systematic coordination of the fraud, how he had coached Brandon explicitly to process paperwork without proper verification, how to override the bank's internal flags. Mr. Keen said it was a family arrangement, Brandon explained, his voice barely above a whisper, deliberately avoiding Victor's malevolent glare. He said his stepdaughter was just busy, always traveling, but that she had authorized everything, verbally, implicitly. Howard Langley, the bank manager, described discovering the forged signatures, his voice steady and professional, devoid of his earlier trembling, as he meticulously pointed out the blatant discrepancies. Once we detected the first forgery, initially flagged by our system, we subsequently found at least 7 others across multiple accounts, all linked to Miss Adler's identity. As each devastating piece of evidence fell into place, an undeniable cascade of truth, I watched Victor's practiced facade, his carefully maintained composure, crumble before my very eyes. His practiced, confident smile hardened, then fractured into a grimace of pure fury. When the prosecutor dramatically displayed the damning spreadsheet tracking my accounts, the one Victor had meticulously kept on his laptop, a deep, angry flush crept up his neck, a telltale sign of his growing desperation. "Mr. Keene," Carmen asked, her voice calm and cutting during her cross-examination, "can you explain to the court why you maintained a spreadsheet meticulously tracking Miss Adler's work schedule against mail delivery times at her apartment?" Victor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. I was just helping manage her finances by intercepting her mail." "That's not." His voice trailed off, his bluster failing. "And can you explain these very specific notes regarding her work presentations in Chicago?" Carmen continued, relentless. "The ones that coincide exactly, to the day, with new account applications being opened in her name?" Victor's jaw tightened, a muscle clenching visibly. "I don't recall," he mumbled, a desperate, transparent lie. "You don't recall creating this detailed, systematic method for monitoring your stepdaughter's movements, specifically designed to better facilitate the commission of fraud?" Carmen's voice was sharp, unforgiving. "Objection." Lawrence Bentley stood abruptly, his face flushed. "Counsel is badgering the witness, Your Honor." "Sustained," Judge Winters said, her voice crisp and clear. "Rephrase, Miss Velasquez." Carmen allowed herself a slight, knowing smile. She didn't need to badger. The truth was evident. "Mr. Keene," Carmen concluded, her voice devoid of emotion, "did you create this spreadsheet?" "Yes," Victor admitted, defeated, his voice a barely audible whisper. No further questions. The victory, I realized, wasn't in shouting or emotional outbursts. It was in the methodical, undeniable dismantling of their lies, piece by painstaking piece, until nothing remained but the stark, unvarnished truth. Judge Winters called a brief recess, the sudden silence in the courtroom amplifying the collective buzz of whispers that immediately erupted. When she returned, her expression was grave, her gaze unwavering as she surveyed the courtroom. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented," she began, her voice resonating with authority, "I am expanding the temporary restraining order to include Lillian Keene, effective immediately." She then turned her gaze to the prosecutor. "Mr. Reeves, does the state wish to proceed with formal charges?" Jackson Reeves rose, his posture unwavering. "Yes, Your Honor. The state is filing formal criminal charges of identity theft, bank fraud, and witness intimidation against Victor Keene, and comprehensive conspiracy charges against Lillian Keene, effective immediately." A court officer, a stoic woman with an air of quiet efficiency, approached Victor. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the suddenly, horrifyingly silent room, a sound that would forever be seared into my memory. "Lillian," Victor called out, desperation replacing his earlier bluster, his voice raw with a chilling, sudden fear. "Tell them this is ridiculous. Tell them it's a mistake. My mother didn't move." Her eyes, fixed on her trembling hands, twisted in her lap, refused to meet his, refused to offer any comfort or false reassurance. She was, I realized, utterly alone in that moment, just as I had been. "The court is further ordering all assets of Victor and Lillian Keene frozen, pending civil judgment," Judge Winters continued, her voice clear and precise. "Mr. Keene will remain in custody, denied bail due to flight risk and a clear pattern of intimidation. Miss Keene, while you are not being taken into custody at this time, this court finds sufficient evidence of systematic fraud to warrant further investigation. You may be facing additional conspiracy charges depending on the ongoing findings of the state's investigation." The power shift was palpable, undeniable. Where once they had loomed over me as figures of authority, of unassailable power. Now they stood exposed, diminished, Victor in handcuffs, his face a mask of furious despair, my mother a shrunken, silent figure, utterly diminished by the harsh light of truth. I became aware of subtle movement in the gallery. Several of my mother's church friends, their faces etched with newfound understanding and a touch of shame, quietly rose and moved to sit behind me, a silent, powerful show of support. Mrs. Peterson, who had taught my Sunday school class 20 years ago, squeezed my shoulder gently as she passed, her touch conveying a deep, silent empathy. The final hearing moved quickly, a blur of legal formalities. Victor was officially denied bail, the judge citing his long history of deception and the recent acts of vandalism and intimidation. The civil case was fast-tracked, with a comprehensive lien placed on my parents' assets, including the rental property my mother had so cleverly, so deceitfully, kept hidden from me. The court orders immediate credit restoration procedures, Judge Winters announced, her gaze firm. The evidence clearly shows Miss Adler was a victim of systematic, calculated identity theft, a victim of those who should have protected her. When it was time for victim impact statements, I stood. My legs, to my surprise, felt remarkably steady as I approached the podium, my heart beating with a quiet, resolute strength. Your Honor, I began, my voice clear and unwavering in the hushed courtroom, resonating with a newfound confidence. Today ends the betrayal, but it does not, and cannot, end the hurt. The wounds will take time to heal. I looked directly at my mother, her face a mask of despair. Family means protection, Your Honor, not exploitation. What they stole wasn't just money, or an inheritance. It was trust, it was a sense of safety, it was my fundamental belief that the people who should protect me most would not be the ones to inflict such profound harm. I took a deep, fortifying breath. I'm not asking for vengeance, Your Honor. I'm asking for justice, for consequences that truly match the calculated, premeditated nature of these actions. And I'm asking that this case, my experience, help others who might be facing similar, insidious betrayals by family members, who might be trapped by the same twisted logic that family loyalty somehow means accepting abuse. Judge Winters nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful, her gaze lingering on me. Miss Adler, this court commends your remarkable courage in pursuing justice despite immense family pressure and intimidation. Too often, cases like these go unreported, remain hidden, because victims feel a misplaced obligation to protect their abusers, to maintain a false peace. She then turned to Victor, her voice hardening. Mr. Keene, you are facing a potential federal sentence of 14 years. Let that sink in. To my mother, her voice less harsh but no less firm, Mrs. Keene, you are looking at a minimum of 2 years probation, potentially more, depending on your cooperation with ongoing investigations and the extent of your proven complicity. When it was finally over, Carmen squeezed my arm, a silent gesture of pride and camaraderie. This case will help countless others facing family identity theft, Stephanie. You've bravely created a roadmap, a blueprint for recovery and justice. Outside, the rain had begun to fall, a soft, cleansing downpour, washing the courthouse steps clean, as if purifying the very ground. I stepped into the refreshing torrent, my face tilted upward, letting the cool water wash away the last traces of lingering shame and undeserved guilt. Water streamed down my cheeks, indistinguishable from the silent tears of release. I felt Caleb's solid, reassuring presence before I even saw him. The unwavering reality of him, his broad back, blocking the rain from my face. He held a large umbrella over my head, his expression a comforting mix of fierce pride and deep concern. Ready? He asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, straightening my shoulders, feeling taller, stronger, lighter than I had in years. For the first time since this began, I am truly ready. I walked away from the courthouse, upright, unbowed, no longer hunched against an expected blow. The rain continued to fall, erasing footprints behind us, washing the courthouse steps clean, signifying a fresh start. 3 days after the sentence was handed down, a strange, quiet calm settled over me. I sat on the polished bench outside the federal courthouse, watching the vibrant autumn leaves dance across the ancient stone steps, their carefree movement a stark contrast to the gravity of what had transpired within. The morning newspaper rested beside me, neatly folded to reveal Lillian's public apology letter. Her carefully chosen words, likely crafted by her attorney, finally acknowledged what Victor had vehemently denied until the very end. They had systematically stolen my identity, meticulously, devastatingly, to finance a lifestyle built on fragile schemes and an ever-growing web of lies. 14 years, I whispered, the number feeling both just and utterly surreal, still processing the weight of Victor's plea agreement. The sentence felt like punishment for a betrayal that couldn't possibly be measured in time alone, a wound that went far deeper than mere financial loss. My phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Harrington next door. Lasagna tonight. No arguments. The neighborhood meal train, a surprising, unexpected safety net of casserole dishes and watchful eyes, continued weeks after the sentencing. When Jeff Wilson across the street installed new security cameras, he had, without being asked, angled one specifically toward my front door. A silent, powerful statement of protection and community support. I tucked the newspaper into my tote bag as Carmen exited the courthouse, her heels clicking confidently on the stone, her presence a beacon of strength. Credit Bureau number 3 finally cleared everything, she announced, sliding her sleek sunglasses onto her face, her eyes alight with satisfaction. Your score should rebound completely within 60 days, Stephanie. A clean slate. The persistent, agonizing knot that had lived between my shoulder blades, a constant physical manifestation of my anxiety since that very first day at Sunrise Credit Union, loosened slightly, a profound physical release. Last night, I had slept 7 uninterrupted hours, a miraculous, peaceful slumber, no longer startling awake, no longer fearing the phone might ring with Victor's angry accusations or Lillian's manipulative tears. I never thought I'd have to choose justice over family, I told Carmen, my gaze following a young couple pushing a stroller up the courthouse steps. They laughed at something their baby did, a sound of pure, unadulterated parental delight, a sound I once witnessed, long ago, between my mother and father, before cancer and Victor and loans I never signed, stole it all away. You didn't choose, Stephanie, Carmen corrected me gently, sitting beside me, her voice firm with conviction. They did, every single time they forged your name, every time they opened an account in your name. They made that choice. My email notification sounded, a soft chime of a new beginning, the official offer letter for senior project manager, complete with a substantial 25% raise. The promotion I had nearly lost when collection calls started coming to my office, threatening to derail my entire career. Later that evening, Caleb grilled steaks at his cozy bungalow, the scent of searing meat mingling with the crisp autumn air. We were celebrating our newly filed co-ownership of the restored family cabin. The vandalism had been meticulously repaired, new, state-of-the-art security systems installed, and cherished memories, once shattered, were slowly being reclaimed, piece by precious piece. To the family we choose, Caleb said, raising his glass, his eyes reflecting the dancing fireflies in his backyard. I clinked my glass against his, a silent, profound agreement. Not the family that chose to betray me, but the family forged in resilience, in loyalty, in love. 6 months after the sentencing, a new chapter had opened, vibrant and purposeful. I stood at a podium in the Sunrise Credit Union community room, facing a diverse group of 20 seniors, their hands clutching coffee cups and notepads, their faces eager for knowledge. Identity theft feels like drowning, I told them, my voice resonating with hard-won experience and empathy. But I promise you, with the right tools and support, you can reach the surface again, you can reclaim your life. The confidence in my voice, the easy authority, would have been utterly unimaginable that terrifying autumn morning when Howard Langley's trembling hands had pushed those forged documents toward me, shattering my world. Now, I helped others navigate what had once overwhelmed me, the complex maze of credit freezes, the arduous process of filing police reports, the emotional journey of crafting victim impact statements. Sunday mornings now found me on the cabin porch, a steaming cup of coffee beside my laptop as I meticulously developed next month's Senior Center Fraud Awareness Program. The lake, bathed in the soft morning light, rippled with gentle waves, a tranquil contrast to the churning anxiety that had once lived, a constant torment, in my chest. Caleb appeared, a basket of freshly baked muffins in hand, sawdust still clinging to his flannel shirt, a reassuring sign of his steady, industrious presence. "The East bedroom renovation starts today," he announced, his voice cheerful. "The contractor says we'll have space for 4 retreat participants by summer." This dream is becoming a reality. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Her fraud unit, bolstered by my insights and our shared experience, had taken on 2 new cases, using my meticulously documented evidence template as their guiding light. 3 families, inspired by my story, had successfully prosecuted similar cases in the last 4 months alone, bravely breaking the suffocating silence that had long protected their abusers. The corporate training program I had developed on recognizing financial abuse had been adopted by 3 national companies, a testament to its effectiveness. From project manager to fraud prevention specialist, my boss had joked, approving my flexible schedule to accommodate my growing number of speaking engagements. Therapy had been an invaluable lifeline, helping me process the trauma without succumbing to bitterness. Dr. Linden's gentle guidance had helped me unravel the insidious threads of how Lillian's manipulation had taken root after my father died when I was 18, leaving me vulnerable and desperate for any semblance of family connection. When Lillian had tentatively requested reconciliation last month, a carefully worded, almost manipulative message, I had declined, gently but firmly, without the crushing, familiar guilt that once would have consumed me. "Full accountability first, Lillian," I had told her simply, my voice unwavering. "Then, and only then, can we discuss forgiveness?" The scholarship fund for identity theft victims, housed at Sunrise Credit Union, grew steadily, a beacon of hope for others. Howard Langley, his silver-rimmed glasses still catching the light, had become a passionate advocate for bank policy reform, speaking with fervent conviction about prevention at community workshops, his commitment forged from the crucible of my experience. Exactly 1 year after that first, devastating confrontation in the bank lobby, I sat once again in the same burgundy chair at Sunrise Community Credit Union. The lobby still smelled of lemon polish and coffee, the familiar scents a testament to enduring routines. But today, my perspective was entirely different. I noticed an elderly woman at the desk beside mine, her hands twisting a fragile tissue, a familiar, heartbreaking gesture of anxiety, as her son leaned over her shoulder, his face etched with a subtle, predatory impatience. "Just sign it, Mom," he insisted, his voice impatient, jabbing his finger at the document, a chilling echo of Victor's past words. "It's a small line of credit. We talked about this." The woman's shoulders hunched forward, her signature pen hovering uncertainly over the line, her face a mask of conflict. I recognized the posture, the hesitant uncertainty, the profound emotional weight, the posture of someone trapped between deeply ingrained family obligation and a desperate, fledgling need for self-protection. A year ago, I was that woman. I rose from my chair, a sense of purpose guiding my steps, and approached their table with a credit union brochure, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the gray fear in the woman's eyes. "Excuse me," I said gently, my voice clear and compassionate. "I'm Stephanie Adler from the Fraud Prevention Department. We offer free, confidential financial reviews for all new accounts, especially for our senior clients." The son straightened abruptly, irritation flashing across his face, a flicker of resentment. "We don't need that. We're fine." "Actually," the elderly woman said quietly, her voice gaining a surprising, gentle strength, her eyes meeting mine, a silent plea for help. "I'd like to hear more. I think that would be very helpful." Later, in Howard's office, the woman sipped herbal tea, her hands calmer now, as she described her son's escalating gambling debts, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and relief. Howard made careful notes, his manner respectful, calm, and utterly professional. Financial abuse thrives in silence, I told her, my voice gentle but firm, especially when it involves family. Breaking that silence, asking for help, is the first, brave step towards healing, towards reclaiming your life. At the cabin that weekend, the air crisp and invigorating, I helped Caleb install new, expansive windows in the retreat space. The glass, specially treated, maximized the natural light illumination for those dark, hidden corners where secrets once festered, now filled with the promise of transparency and healing. 3 more families had requested consultations with Carmen's legal team, their courage bolstered by the templates we had painstakingly developed, by the path we had forged. I had been asked to testify before a legislative committee on family identity theft statutes, a profound opportunity to bring crucial visibility to crimes typically hidden behind the closed, respectable doors of family homes. That evening, I sat on the porch, writing in my journal, forgiving myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for not protecting myself sooner. The page filled with words I couldn't have written a year ago: understanding, boundaries, growth. I closed the journal, its pages filled with a new truth, and walked to the porch, watching the stars reflect on the lake's dark, tranquil surface. The signature that had broken us, the one they had so cruelly forged, had also, in a strange, painful twist of fate, signed my freedom papers. Some family ties, I realized, are meant to be broken, sometimes violently, so that something healthier, something more authentic, something truly restorative, can finally grow.